Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and enjoy this fanfic part 2. Now let's start the fanfic. Danzo stepped into the massive cavern and looked up at the towering, ominous statue on the far wall, then looked sideways at his two escorts. The blonde that had found him while the rest of his missing nin team fought shoved him forward roughly, and the other snickered and walked forward to the left hand and jumped onto the index finger while the blonde leapt onto the right one. One by one, multicolored holograms of the other mysterious members of the group appeared on the other fingers, leaving only the left little finger empty. I ordered you not to summon us unless you had important news, one of them, a man with spiky hair and silver eyes with a ripple design, growled. Unless this man is a target or has a large enough bounty on his head to end our attempt at raising funds, you are wasting time. As order, the one with gray hair slicked back grinned. No, yes, and no or not. That much of a bounty, huh? The only female silhouette questioned. Who is he? He was a Konohagakure elder, the blonde replied. The crazy bastard was hiring missing nin to stage a coup d'etat. We hopped on and decided to see how it would go. His plan went sideways, though, when the damn Hokage refused to wipe out the Uchiha. Anyway, my clay clone got beat and Hidan got himself decapitated. We dug him back up and Danzo proved himself extremely proficient in medical jutsus, being able to reattach it. Figured he'd make a good recruit. He failed and you decided he would make a good recruit. The first silhouette questioned. Don't you think we have enough failures? We have you, after all. A couple chuckled, but the woman, the one speaking, and the blonde all stayed silent, and with seconds the others were silent too. You have been nothing but disappointing, Deidara, the hologram stated, his voice flat but somehow dripping malice and rage. You bring in next to no money. You bring in no information regarding Jinchuriki ever. And now you bring in a fool of a village elder who lost a coup to a half-dozen jonin at most. You are a failure, Deidara. Told you he wouldn't be happy, Hidan sneered. You are no better, Hidan, the female snapped. You are constantly attacking and trying to kill you partners, Deidara being the fifth that we will be separating you from for their safety. You have both failed miserably in your missions. Hidan, if we knew how to kill you, you would be dead. Deidara, we would kill you, but you are still good at incapacitating targets. Hidan, report to Kakuzu, he will be your new partner. Sasori, I'm afraid you will have to work with Deidara, maybe then he will get something done. What about Danzo? Deidara questioned, knowing that they might as well know whether or not to turn him in. For now, Kisame is going to meet up with you and test him, the first hologram stated. Should he deem Danzo worthy, Danzo will be accepted into our ranks as Orochimaru's replacement. If not, he will be returned to Konoha by one of our less popular members for the bounty. As a reminder, each of you should be searching for any possible recruits. I have a complaint, Deidara spoke up suddenly. Why is it that all of us have to cringe in fear at our lack of progress while Conan never has to report? I mean really. She's a cold bitch and she never has to. The first hologram made the seal of confrontation and Deidara's entire body lit up red as the hologram's ripple designs began moving outward while new ones began to spread from his pupils. Deidara's scream of agony spread through the cavern, making everyone except Danzo, Conan, and their leader. After nearly a minute, the hologram ended the jutsu and Deidara fell to his hands and knees on his finger, panting for air. The reason that Conan does not need to report is because she is with me, the hologram growled. She doesn't report because she does exactly what I tell her to as I tell her to do it. Something you could learn to do. And with that, both he and Conan's holograms were gone. Alright then, Kisame, a tall man with gills below his eyes and a massive sword on his back. I'll see you guys soon. He disappeared and Kakuzu told Hidan to hurry up. Sasori promised to be there quickly, then the rest of the holograms vanished and Danzo sighed. Would I had brought my sword, Danzo sighed. A sword won't help against him, Hidan promised. He's going to tear you apart. An hour later, Kisame and Sasori arrived and Hidan loaned Danzo his scythe. Kisame charged forward, Swinging a fist, and Danzo stuck the scythe into the ground and leaned out of the way of the punch, then dropped to the ground, planting his foot in Kisami's chest and sending him flying backward. Danzo picked the scythe up, resting it on his shoulder with the blades hanging down, and Kisame drew his sword. They both charged again, and this time, their blades met with a loud clang before Danzo's scythe blade slipped down Kisami's blade and Kisame planted a knee to his face, smashing him back. Danzo took the scythe with him, and the scythe took the wrapping that Kisame kept on his sword. Impressive. Danzo grinned, eyeing the sword. Thank you. Kisame smiled, hefting his 8-foot-long sword with a blade made out of scales and a small skull pommel. It absorbs chakra from enemies and transfers it to me. I am known as the tailless tailed beast. I don't give even half a shit, Danzo sneered, sticking the scythe into the ground and making hand seals. Wind style, vacuum bomb. He blew a massive blast of wind out at Kisame, who simply swung his sword and absorbed the entire attack. His sword grew until it was as broad as he was tall, and he grinned. Danzo instantly began making more hand seals and instantly fired a barrage of the same attack at Kisame. Kisame absorbed all 20, then lifted his sword that was now quivering and massive. Kisame seemed to have a bit of trouble holding it up and moving it, but when Danzo sent a second barrage, Kisame absorbed them all as well. Then Kisame growled in frustration and channeled all of the chakra from his sword into him before doubling over, coughing up blood and gasping for air. What did you do to me? Kisame gasped. Everyone has a limit to the amount of chakra they can hold, Danzo stated. I knew that your body was used to having a massive amount of chakra in it, so I pumped enough to kill 30 Jonin into you. Then, I placed a seal in the chakra itself that is rejecting your chakra. In a little more than minute, you'll be dead. Unless you concede. And just so you're aware, I control the seal mentally. If I wish it to reactivate at any given time, it will. I give. Kisame shouted. Deactivate the seal. Release. Danzo said, making the seal of confrontation, and Kisame stood glaring at him. Welcome to the Akatsuki, partner, Kisame sneered, holding his hand out. Thank you. Danzo grinned. Hidan, catch. Danzo tossed him his scythe and Hidan nodded, then left just as Sasori arrived. Did I miss the big brawl? Sasori questioned. No brawl, Deidara stated. Danzo put a seal inside Kisame and made him puke blood. Naruto knelt under the tree, Sasuke and Sakura beside him. They were doing what no other village had the guts to let their genin do one mission out of the academy. They were taking the Chunin exams. Naruto grinned, thinking about how he got signed up for it in the first place. I would like to recommend my entire team for the exam, Kakashi spoke up, surprising everyone. I'll second that, Minato agreed. They may be young, but they're ready. I'll put my team in too, Kurenai stated. Me too, Asuma added. They can handle anything Kakashi's kids can throw at them. I think my son will be the one to get furthest, Minato grinned. Now, you are all dismissed. 3 days later, Naruto found himself sitting at a desk with Sasuke and Sakura and with several clones breaking into his father's personal library. Within 5 minutes all of his questions were answered and his clones had left, leaving no trace of ever being there. The others had had a hard time with their questions except a select few who had a special jutsu that allowed them to get answers from the Chunin that were placed among them. After a while, the ninja behind Naruto was eliminated along with his team, and the instructor suggested that anyone else that didn't think they would pass leave, and several did. Then, the rest passed. A day later, Phase 2 began and they were sent into the Forest of Death with either an Earth or Heaven scroll and were told to retrieve the other kind from another team, by any means necessary, including death. What kind of scroll do we have again? Naruto questioned. Heaven, Sasuke stated. Wonder where the nearest Earth scroll is. Let's go find out, Sakura suggested. I have to take a leak first, Naruto stated before walking into the bushes. Sakura sat down to wait and Sasuke glanced at her for a moment before leaning against a tree. After a couple minutes, Naruto walked back out, sighing in relief. I didn't realize I needed to go that bad, Naruto sighed. Alright, let's get. Before he could finish, Sasuke smashed his foot into his face, sending him flying. When Naruto landed, he wiped some blood from the side of his mouth and drew the kunai from the kunai pouch on his left leg. What was that, Sasuke? Sakura questioned. Yeah, Sasuke, what the hell? Naruto questioned. First, Naruto's right-handed, not left, Sasuke snarled. His kunai pouch is on his right leg. Second, Naruto's kunai aren't the standard variety. They look like this. He held up the one Naruto had told him to hold onto, and Naruto suddenly appeared beside him, wire wrapped around him so tightly it was digging into his skin in some places. Sasuke cut him free and Naruto took the kunai, glaring at the imposter. The little caught me while I was taking a leak, Naruto growled. I'll handle this. Will you? The fake Naruto questioned as smoke covered him. When it cleared, there was an Omegakure ninja standing before them with a tan bodysuit, a breathing mask, a white cloth over his eyes with eye holes cut out, and spiky brown hair. Name's Oboro, the ninja smirked. Catch, Oboro, Naruto said, throwing his kunai at him. Oboro leaned out of the way, but just as it was passing his head, Naruto appeared in front of him, his fist smashing into Oboro's stomach as Naruto caught his kunai. Oboro flew backward, flipping over and doing a backward handspring and disappearing into the trees. I tagged him, Naruto stated. We'll give him a couple hours, then we'll go get our scroll. Sounds good, Sasuke grinned. How did you do that? Sakura questioned. I'm good, Naruto grinned before tossing her the kunai and handing Sasuke another. Hold on to these for me. They nodded and began walking while Sasuke tried to think of a way to avoid imposters again. My dad taught me a seal, Naruto stated. It only appears visible if you channel chakra to it, and it doesn't really do anything except look like a tattoo. We could use it to avoid imposters. Great idea, Sasuke muttered. If only you were stupid. Then we could have a massively difficult password. Here, Naruto said, setting his hand on the side of Sasuke's neck for a moment and placing the seal, then doing the same for Sakura. He placed his own seal on the palm of his hand. Now, let's go find a second way to get our scroll before we go after our dear friend Oboro, Naruto smirked. Just as he said this, the birds, which had somehow been brave enough to venture into the forest and sing, went silent and a low roar began to sound from further into the trees. What is that? Sasuke questioned. Not good, Naruto stated. Suddenly, above, gale force winds began to explode out of the trees, tearing them up and hurling them. The winds hit Sasuke, Naruto, and Sakura, and Sasuke grabbed Sakura and threw them both out of the path of the wind while Naruto was blown backward by the jutsu. He plowed up almost a quarter mile of land before finally stopping and the winds died down. He pushed himself up just as a massive snake as big around as the Hokage's office was slithered out of the trees staring at him. Ugly piece of shit, Naruto snorted. You think I'm lunch, don't you? Just as it lunged forward, Naruto teleported to Sasuke, arriving in time to grab the scroll before he could throw it to a shinobi who was wrapped around a branch like a snake. What the hell do you think you're doing? Naruto questioned, taking his kunai from Sasuke. We can't fight him, Sasuke stated. We'll see, Naruto grinned as hundreds of teleportation seals spread from his feet, covering the surrounding trees and leaves. I'll handle this, scaredy cat. The grass ninja looked around then at Naruto and grinned. So, it's the fourth Hokage's brat, is it? The ninja questioned. Allow me to introduce myself. Orochimaru. I've heard of you, Naruto stated. One of the 3 legendary Sannin of the Hidden Leaf. You deserted because they stopped you from performing monstrous tests to try to unlock immortality. You wanted to learn every jutsu, so you tried to sacrifice others to gain immortality. You're a monster. I'm honored to be so well known by someone so young, Orochimaru hissed. Shall we begin? I already did, Naruto stated, suddenly on the underside of the branch Orochimaru was standing on. Impossible, Orochimaru thought. I didn't even see him move. Don't tell me he actually learned his father's jutsu. Rasengan. Naruto shouted, slamming his Rasengan into Orochimaru's stomach after appearing in front of him. Orochimaru flew away from the explosion, crashing through 3 trees then crashing to the ground. So that's it, Orochimaru growled. That was almost perfect. Just too weak. Naruto summoned his training sword then created 2 clones. Both formed a Rasengan in their left hands and drew their swords then leapt at Orochimaru. Multiple striking shadow snakes. Orochimaru shouted holding his arm out. A dozen dark brown snakes shout out of his sleeve at the Naruto clones. The 2 spun removing the snakes' heads as dozens more shot out of Orochimaru's sleeve then other sleeve as well. This time, most of the snakes restrained the 2 clones and one of them blasted them with the Rasengan and Naruto's other clone fell toward Orochimaru. A single snake shot out of his sleeve and the clone shoved the Rasengan down its throat then released his jutsu. Orochimaru tore the snake off just as the Rasengan exploded and sent him flying again. This time, when he stood, he glared at Naruto. Impressive brat, Orochimaru growled. But now it's my turn. He pulled his left sleeve up and wiped some blood from the corner of his mouth, wiping it across the tattoo on his left wrist. Summoning jutsu. Orochimaru shouted summoning the same massive snake that had tried to eat Naruto. Kill him. Gladly. Naruto said creating a perfect Rasengan and leaping at the snake. The snake shot forward and swallowed Naruto but after a moment, his stomach expanded and continued to grow until the snake finally exploded and Orochimaru stared in shock as Naruto leapt at him. Naruto's eyes were red with slit pupils and he had grown claws. And he in no sense of the word was playing around anymore. Orochimaru moved to retreat but Naruto teleported to a seal in front of him and slashed at him with his claws. Orochimaru managed to avoid it just as a sword planted itself in his chest, tacking him to the branch he was on. Orochimaru suddenly melted into a pile of mud and the real one appeared behind one Naruto and another clone behind the other. Both restrained their Naruto with snakes from their sleeves then made a hand seal and held their other hand by their side as purple flames appeared on their fingertips. 5-prong seal. They both said as they drove their hand into his abdomen, adding a second layer to the seal keeping Kurama inside of Naruto. Both Narutos passed out and the one the clone had restrained blacked out as Orochimaru threw the other away. Sakura attacked him to a tree with his kunai to stop him from falling. Naruto stirred for a moment, seeing Orochimaru moving toward Sasuke. If you won't fight, then run, you coward, Naruto called out to him before passing out again. Sad, but true, Orochimaru smiled. The Uchiha is weaker than the outcast. Sasuke's eyes widened as his own voice played through his mind, declaring his dream to surpass his brother. Itachi would tear Orochimaru apart. Sasuke knew he had to stop him, even if to protect his friends. Fine then, Sasuke muttered activating his Sharingan, now with both eyes sporting two tomo. Bring it on. Sasuke placed a kunai in his mouth, biting down on the blade and sprinted forward. Orochimaru grinned and readied himself. He sent out a blast of wind to send Sasuke flying but Sasuke leapt over it, hurling kunai at Orochimaru. Orochimaru leaned out of the way, allowing them to sail past and Sasuke landed on a tree then leapt at Orochimaru, beginning with 2 kicks before flipping over Orochimaru and landing on his feet. They both charged and began to fight in a near blur. Attack after attack they tried to slip past each other's defenses always falling short of their goal. Finally, Orochimaru flipped over him, landing behind him then blurring into motion and vanishing. Sasuke whipped his head around but Orochimaru was already gone. He looked around and saw him zipping through the trees, almost too fast to see, but not quite. Orochimaru suddenly leapt at Sasuke and Sasuke dove out of the way then fired a fireball jutsu at him. The result was a column of spiraling raging flames but after a moment, it went out from a massive blast of wind and before the smoke had even cleared, Orochimaru shot toward Sasuke inside the tree, destroying it in a tree then emerging just in time to swipe at Sasuke but Sasuke leapt back taking a steadying breath. After a moment of them waiting for the other to act, Orochimaru sent a blast of wind at Sasuke again but Sasuke leapt to a branch over them then off of it and past Orochimaru, wrapping his legs around Orochimaru's chest and his arms around his waist, then flipping over and driving Orochimaru downward head first. Orochimaru's head split the branch, sending crack spider webbing along the length of it. Orochimaru's arms spasmed for several seconds before falling limp. Sasuke leapt away from Orochimaru and his legs fell at the knees. Then, Orochimaru turned into mud and kunai began raining out of the trees at Sasuke. He flipped off of the branch and spread some wire, catching himself on a branch and spinning around the tree, landing on another branch and looking around. A second later, Orochimaru appeared running toward him and throwing a punch to his face. Sasuke stumbled back, but just as he began to steady himself, another punch hit his face, then a knee, then another punch. Sasuke finally flew backward and landed in a heap and Orochimaru smirked. "What a disappointment you turned out to be," Orochimaru sighed. "Your ancestors weep. The Uchiha should thank me for killing you. Silly little worm." Sasuke opened his eyes just as three tiny but powerful explosives he had planted on Orochimaru's clothes exploded, making him stumble forward. Sasuke instantly jumped up, flipping past Orochimaru as Orochimaru fell. Sasuke threw several shuriken tied together with wire past Orochimaru, holding the wire in his hands and between his teeth. The shuriken wrapped around Orochimaru in a tree, binding him in place, and Sasuke grinned, releasing the wires from his hands, holding it tight only with the one in his mouth. Fire style, Dragon Flame Jutsu. Sasuke thought, making the hand seals, then sending the flame along the wire in his mouth. The flame hit Orochimaru and instantly exploded out the far side of the tree. Orochimaru screamed in agony as he burned and Sasuke watched carefully. Finally, the fire died and Orochimaru's head fell forward, the massive hole in the tree still smoking. Sakura ran over as Sasuke bent forward, energy depleted. "Are you okay?" Sakura questioned. "It's all right, it's all over." Suddenly, Orochimaru began to walk forward, breaking the wires easily. He made a hand seal and suddenly Sakura and Sasuke couldn't control their bodies. Sakura fell to her knees and Sasuke was only barely resisting the same. "No," Sasuke growled. "It's impossible. Such mastery of the Sharingan, at so young an age," Orochimaru commented, voice changing from a girl's to a man's part way through. The side of his face was burned off, revealing pale white skin with a purple pigmentation around his eye, the eye itself being yellow with a slit pupil. "You're a true Uchiha after all," Orochimaru sneered, covering the sign on his headband then removing it to reveal a sound note. "Yes, you'll do nicely." Sasuke struggled to move but couldn't and Orochimaru grinned at his determination. "You are definitely his brother," Orochimaru sneered. "If anything, your eyes are even keener than Itachi's." "How do you know Itachi?" Sasuke snapped. "I've fought him before," Orochimaru stated. "He is a very dangerous individual." "What do you want?" Sasuke shouted. Orochimaru laughed, pulling out their heaven scroll and holding it out, then said, "That will have to wait until we meet again. Which won't happen until you finish this test with the best score of all." Suddenly, green flames began to burn their way out from the scroll. "The scroll," Sakura gasped. "First you'll have to defeat the hidden sound ninja that served me," Orochimaru sneered. "I have no idea what you're talking about," Sakura shouted. "But if you've finished, why don't you just beat it? If we never meet again it'll be too soon." "Oh, he and I will meet again," Orochimaru promised before making a hand seal similar to tiger but with the middle fingers crossed across the index fingers. His head suddenly shot into the air, his neck stretching as his head shot over to Sasuke and bit him, placing a seal where he bit him. Then, his head returned to his body as Sasuke began to struggling to breath, holding his hand over the seal. "What did you do to Sasuke?" Sakura shouted. "I just gave him a little parting gift," Orochimaru hissed. "Very soon, Sasuke will seek me out and desire my power. In the meantime, I enjoyed the demonstration of the powers you already possess." He then sank into the tree laughing. Then, he was gone, and Sasuke finally passed out. "Naruto!" Sasuke shouted, hoping he would wake up. "Sasuke's hurt." I need you. Naruto opened his eyes and looked around, seeing Sasuke and Sakura a distance away and Choji and Shikamaru sitting beside him trying to wake him up. Finally, Choji smirked. You missed it. Sasuke beat the shit out of some team from the Hidden Sound Village. Naruto rolled his eyes, pushing himself to his feet and walked over to Sasuke and Sakura. You guys beat the Sound Ninja team? Naruto questioned. Yes, Sasuke stated. They gave us their scroll to keep their lives, but Orochimaru burned ours, so we still need a heaven scroll now. I see. Naruto sighed. I assume they all have Earth scrolls. Both actually, Sakura stated. But as thanks for saving us, we're letting them keep them. Alright, Naruto sighed. Then let's go find the tower. Eventually we'll find a team, and if not, we can wait there for one. We could teleport to those AIM ninja, Sasuke suggested. No, remember, they were trying to get our heaven scroll, Naruto reminded him. So they have an Earth scroll, Sakura finished. Alright, maybe we'll meet one of the other teams that are trying to get there to finish. Then we can take theirs. Naruto nodded, then teleported to his kunai, which were still stuck in the tree above, then returned to Sakura and Sasuke, and they left the other teams to try to reach the tower. So, how long were we out? Naruto questioned. Days, Sakura stated. There's about 24 hours left until the end of the exam. There probably aren't that many teams left. Great, Naruto groaned. Hey, is it true that you're the fourth Hokage's son? Sakura questioned. Yes, Naruto stated. Why did you never say that? Sakura questioned. 2 reasons, Naruto stated. First, you never asked. Second, I don't want to be judged by who my family is. I want to be judged by who I am. Oh, Sakura stated. I wouldn't have. Shish. Naruto said, suddenly holding up a hand. You hear that? They listened and faintly heard a scream in the distance. They rushed toward it and found a Leaf Village ninja beside his unconscious team trying to wake them up while Kabuto watched from beside them. Shame they opened them, Kabuto sighed. The hypnosis seal knocked them out and you failed. Which do you have? Naruto questioned. Both. Kabuto smiled, holding them up. I was separated from my team, so I'm going to the tower to wait for them. Why? We need a heaven scroll, Sasuke stated, drawing a kunai. Wait. Naruto said, catching his arm. For one, let's not attack someone we know so little about. Remember Haku. And second, why don't we stick to our original plan and wait at the tower for another team? You'll help us with that, right, Kabuto? Sure. Kabuto smiled. Shall we? Naruto nodded and they continued toward the tower, allowing Kabuto to lead as he was the best at tracking and telling direction. After about 5 hours, they reached a place where they were able to see the tower, and Kabuto took a moment to gauge how far away it was. Just as they were about to continue, a massive centipede appeared beside Sakura and Naruto tacked it to a tree with his kunai. I'll retrieve it later, Naruto stated. Shall we? They continued on their walk for several hours. Finally, when the moon was already high in the sky, they stopped to catch their breath, no closer to the tower than they had been the last time they stopped. Naruto realized how when he looked sideways. No way. Naruto groaned. Please tell me that's not the giant centipede I killed. They all looked and groaned. It's your kunai, Sasuke sighed. Genjutsu, Kabuto groaned. That explains a lot. Naruto teleported to his kunai, then jumped back to the others and sighed. They want to attack us while we're tired and frustrated, Kabuto guessed. Like we are right now, Sasuke finished. Exactly, Kabuto sighed. They'll be here soon. Just then, black sludge began to rise around them on every surface. The sludge moved to the ground and formed clones of an AIM ninja with spiky brown hair, a black bodysuit, a cloth covering both eyes, a breathing mask, and each holding a kunai. Hey, it's our buddy. Naruto laughed. You suppose they have a heaven scroll? Definitely, Sasuke smirked. I'll start this. Before he could attack, one of the clones hurled a double-bladed kunai at Kabuto. Kabuto managed to dodge it, but it cut his arm and stuck into his arm. The clones are a genjutsu, but the weapon is real, Sasuke said in confusion. Where are they? Let's find out. Naruto grinned, running forward and kicking a clone, splitting it in half, then rolling under a second. Both halves of the first grew into a complete clone and Naruto grinned. Wish mine did that, Naruto stated before jumping and teleporting to the seal on Oboro. He appeared behind Oboro in the trees and punched him again, sending him crashing into a tree, then caught him and teleported back to a kunai he had left with the others. Now you guys will listen, Naruto shouted to the other members of Oboro's team. Either you come out, or Oboro dies. He's bluffing, Oboro shouted. Kill him. Naruto held his hand up, forming a Rasengan, and then leveled it beside Oboro's head. He dies in 3, 2, 1. Naruto counted down, waiting for a response. Alright, Ross, stop. Another aim ninja shouted as he and the clones were of landed a few feet away. Don't hurt him. The third team member was dressed similar to his teammates with the tan bodysuit and breathing mask, but with one eye hole cut out of the rag over his eyes and with his forehead protector covering his entire head. How many scrolls do you have? Naruto questioned. 6. The ninja said. We plan to have the other teams all fail. Here, take them. Sasuke retrieved the scrolls, then returned to the others, burning all but one of each. Then he turned to the other ninja and grinned. I'll take yours too, Sasuke grinned. I don't have any, the ninja swore. Mubi had them all. 3, 2. Naruto began to count again and the ninja shouted in frustration, throwing another heaven and earth scroll to them. Sasuke burned them too and Naruto grinned and let his Rasengan disappear. Then, he smashed his elbow into Oboro's neck, knocking him out. Mubi and his teammate both turned to run, but Sasuke caught Mubi and Kabuto the other. They both knocked their captives out and they tied them to a tree. That went well, Naruto smiled. Shall we? They continued toward the tower, finally arriving to find Kiba, Hinata, and another Leaf Village ninja they had never seen before waiting at the door. Nothing personal, guys, Kiba sighed. But you'll have to give us those scrolls. Try and take them, Sasuke dared, activating his Sharingan. Kiba charged at him and threw a punch while Sasuke did the same, but Naruto caught both of their fists and twisted until both boys were on their knees begging him to stop. We're not fighting each other, Naruto stated firmly. Sasuke, give them the extra earth scroll. But, now, Naruto growled, twisting harder. Sasuke shouting in pain then pulled the scroll out and threw it to Hinata. She caught it and put it in a bag with 2 heaven scrolls and Naruto released Kiba and Sasuke. What the hell's your problem? Kiba growled. Simple, Naruto stated. Me and Sasuke had to fight a Ing Sanin. I don't feel like watching Sasuke kill you. I'd tear him apart, Kiba stated. He'd massacre you, Naruto stated. Can we go into the tower now? Sure, Sasuke sighed. They all walked into the tower and handed in their scrolls, then sat to wait. Naruto leaned on the railing and looked down at the ring. They had been told that too many had passed the second test, so they would hold preliminaries before the final phase. It was a tournament. Naruto grinned and looked across the room just in time to see Hinata look away. His mind drifted back to the proctor telling them about the preliminaries. Attention, the proctor, Hayate Gecko, shouted over everyone's talking. Thank you. Now, the preliminaries will be a tournament. It will be one-on-one combat, ending when one side surrenders or is unable to continue. If anyone feels unable to continue, speak up now. After a couple of seconds, Sasuke clamped his teeth shut and held his hand over his new seal. Naruto gave him a worried look and Sakura begged him to drop out, but everyone fell silent when Kabuto raised his hand. Okay. You got me, Kabuto smiled. I'm all used up. I'll try again next year. Alright. Hayate nodded before coughing. You can leave. Now, as there are 20 remaining, there will be 10 matches. I said, the fights continue until one side dies or concedes defeat, or are rendered unable to continue. As proctor, I am allowed a certain amount of leeway judging the matches. If the fight seems hopeless, I may step in. I urge anyone who is losing to concede quickly to avoid a fatal outcome. Now, please move to the balcony so we can begin. The balcony was a raised platform around 3 sides of the room. The fourth wall was across from the exit and was dominated by a statue of a pair of arms with the hands forming the ram hand seal with 5 wooden panels in the wall behind it, 2 near each corner with one massive one in the middle directly behind the statue. The top left panel was now open, displaying a screen that would read out the opponents for each fight at random. The name on it now was Sasuke against Yoroi Akado, a member of Kabuto's team with their clan's customary purple clothes and the cloth covering the bottom half of his face, and round black glasses. Sasuke and Yoroi dropped into the ring and the proctor told them to begin. Yoroi instantly sprinted forward, his hand glowing, and grabbed Sasuke by the head, beginning to drain his chakra while pinning his head to the ground. "My chakra," Sasuke groaned. "What are you're stealing it?" "That's right." Yoroi grinned as Sasuke fell limp. After a couple of minutes of Sasuke struggling to move, he finally planted his foot in Yoroi's chest, sending him flying and shouting, "Get off me." "So, you've still got some strength left," Yoroi commented, standing. "Impressive, for a guinea pig." "Whoa, that was close," Sasuke thought, struggling to stand. "Don't worry, I'll make it short and sweet," Yoroi sneered, charging forward again. He began swinging at Sasuke, but Sasuke managed to dodge him for a moment until he brushed his hair. His strength left him and he stumbled past Yoroi, nearly falling. "What's the matter?" Yoroi sneered. "Is that really the best you can do?" Sasuke spun, throwing his foot out in a desperate kick, but Yoroi easily jumped away from it. "I don't have the speed to keep away from him," Sasuke thought. "And I don't have a chance at a close quarters fight. I need to think of something fast." "Come on, Sasuke," Naruto shouted. "If you can handle that snake, you can handle this goon." Sasuke looked back at Naruto before seeing Lee and remembering the fight he had with Lee before the preliminaries began. "That's it," Sasuke thought. "I'll teach you to turn your back on me." Yoroi shouted, charging forward again. "Big mistake, and your last." Again he struggled to hit Sasuke, with Sasuke barely eluding his attacks. Then, he suddenly vanished, before reappearing below him and smashing him into the air with his foot, much as Lee had done to him during their own fight. Yoroi flew into the air and Sasuke flipped onto all fours before leaping after Yoroi, leaving Lee and his sensei both speechless. "Okay, I admit it, I kinda borrowed that move, but from here on in," Sasuke said, appearing behind Yoroi and placing 2 fingers against his back. "It's all original." "The dancing leaf shadow?" Yoroi questioned. "Now take this," Sasuke said seconds before his seal began to act up again and send pain shooting through his body. He stiffened, shouting in pain as the seal began to spread. "No, not again," Sasuke growled. "It keeps getting stronger and stronger." The seal continued to spread and he struggled to slow it without success. "Is that it?" Naruto shouted. "And you call yourself an Uchiha?" "Shut up, loser," Sasuke thought. "Don't write me off yet." "No, I won't let this thing take over." "No way." After another moment, the seal retracted, returning to its dormant state, and Sasuke grinned. "Here we go," Sasuke grinned. Sasuke placed his hand on Yoroi's back, spinning himself and swinging a kick that Yoroi blocked. "Ha!" Yoroi laughed. "You're no match for me." Suddenly Sasuke spun the other way and backhanded Yoroi with a full fist to the chest, sending him shooting downward. Then Sasuke smashed his other fist into Yoroi's face, saying, "Come back here. I'm not done yet." He flipped over and smashed his foot into Yoroi's stomach at the same time as Yoroi smashed into the ground. "Lion's barrage," Sasuke shouted as Yoroi fell limp. Then, Sasuke threw himself backward, sliding along the ground. After a moment, he stopped and lay there for a moment before pushing himself up. "I'm declaring this match over," Hayate stated. "As the winner of the match, Sasuke Uchiha will be advancing to the finals." "Much better," Naruto grinned. "Sakura, that seal, it spread over his body. That's how he beat the sound ninja, right?" "Yes," Sakura muttered. "It made him impossibly strong, but he broke one of their arms just to hurt him. He would have killed them." "I see," Naruto nodded. We'll move right on to the second match now, Hayate called as Sasuke left the ring. The screen cycled through the names, eventually stopping at Shino Aburame and Zaku Abumi. Naruto looked around the room, noticing Hinata looking away from him again as the teammate of hers that he didn't know dropping into the ring along with the sound ninja with the broken arm. Wonder what they can do, Naruto thought aloud. The sound ninja blows blasts of air out of his hands, Sakura stated. The other one, Shino. I don't know. It said Aburame, right? Naruto questioned. Yeah. Sakura nodded. I think Dad told me they were bug breeders, Naruto stated. Maybe they can summon them. Close, Kakashi stated. They breed the bugs inside of their bodies. In exchange for homes, the bugs fight their battles for them. Well, anyway, I'll go make sure Sasuke's okay. And with that, he left. Hey Sakura, Naruto said, nudging her when he noticed Hinata look away again, blushing this time. Who's Hinata? Her. Sakura said, nodding toward her. I know that, but who is she? Naruto said, rolling his eyes. She's heiress to the Hyuga clan, Sakura stated. She's Neji's cousin. She uses the Byakugan, a Kekkei Genkei that allows the user to see other people's chakra networks and see over a large distance. At the same time, Byakugan users usually fight using the gentle fist style, where they barely hit their enemy but send pulses of their chakra into their enemies to damage internal organs or shut down their chakra flow, in the cases of the more skilled Byakugan users. Alright, Naruto nodded. Now why does Hinata keep staring at me? Idiot. Sakura snorted, shaking her head and looking back down at Zaku and Shino as a swarm of bugs began to close in on Zaku along the ground from one side and Shino began to walk toward him with bugs swarming around him in the air. Suddenly, Zaku pulled his injured arm out and aimed it at Shino, then tried to blast both him and his bugs, but suddenly, his arms practically exploded, chakra-laced wind spilling out. What did you do? Zaku questioned. Like you said, Shino said. It's good to have an ace in the hole. However, I prefer to have two aces. I plugged your arms with my bugs. Just to be safe, I plugged your broken arm too. I'm glad I did. Zaku was carried away and the bugs all crawled back inside Shino's coat and Shino returned to his team. Alright everyone, moving on to the third match, Hayate called as the screen began to select two more ninja again. Just then, Sasuke got back and Naruto smirked. So, you seal the mark? Naruto questioned. I did, Kakashi stated, surprised that Naruto knew. Just then, the screen displayed Kankuro and Masumi Tsurugi. The other member of Kabuto's team dropped to the floor. He wore clothing similar to Yoroi's but black with white sleeves showing, and large round glasses. Then, the Sand Village ninja with the bandages with hair on his back dropped to the ground. He wore black pants, a black sweatshirt with a hood that looked to have cat ears. He wore purple war paint on his face and set the object beside him, holding it at the top where it looked like there was brown hair sticking out. Begin, Hayate said, and Masumi instantly shot forward, wrapping his body around Kankuro and constricting him like a snake. The more you struggle, the tighter I'll squeeze, Masumi stated. Jesus, Naruto whispered. It's like Orochimaru. Suddenly, there was a loud crack and Kankuro's head fell limp. I think he broke his neck, Lee stated. You're right, Naruto stated. Suddenly, pieces of Kankuro's face fell off and Naruto grinned. Shame it isn't Kankuro, Naruto grinned. Suddenly the head lifted and twisted around, its left eye revealed as Kankuro's puppet and the rest of the face cracked. Now it's my turn, so say goodbye, the puppet said. Its arms suddenly shot out constricting Masumi as Kankuro stepped out of the bandages where he had been hiding on his puppet's back and pulled his hood back up. The puppet's arms began to squeeze and Masumi screamed in pain. I give up, Masumi shouted. But if your bones are all crushed, just think of how much more flexible you'll be, Kankuro sneered as his puppet dropped Masumi and wrapped itself up in the bandages. Then, Kankuro returned to his team with his puppet and Masumi was taken away. The next two picked were Ino and Sakura. Unfortunately, Naruto couldn't watch because he needed to go to the bathroom, of all things. By the time he got back, Sakura was trapped with chakra hidden below hair that Ino had cut off at some point, and Ino quickly caught her in her signature jutsu, the mind transfer jutsu. Sakura stood up tall, grinning. Did she get her? Lee questioned. Yeah. Naruto nodded as Ino's body fell limp but stayed on her knees somehow. Sakura raised her hand, grinning even wider. Sakura Haruno, would like to say that Ino began, speaking with Sakura's body. Stop. Naruto shouted, going off a hunch. Come on, Sakura. You really want me to tell Sasuke you let Ino beat you? Yell all you want. There's nothing you can do now, Ino sneered. Then, Sakura's body tensed and Ino's control began to slip. Both hands went to the sides of her head and she began to groan in pain. What's happening? Ino screeched. Naruto's so annoying. Ino stiffened again in surprise, recognizing the voice. He's right, I can't let Ino beat me. Ino began to struggle again. Sakura. Ino cried. This can't be happening. What's wrong? Hayate asked. Are you withdrawing or not? Well, are you? No, I won't be withdrawing. Sakura shouted, retaking control. Not today or any day. She struggled again before making a hand seal and saying, release. Chakra covered her body for a moment before shooting back into Ino. Ino stood stumbling away and Sakura grinned. Thanks, Naruto, Sakura called. Ino, you're dead. Both girls were breathing hard and barely able to stand, but they charged forward anyway. The ending, however, could have been better. They punched each other in the face at the same time, knocking each other out, ending the fight in a tie. This fight is a draw, Hayate finally said after waiting for one of the two to stir. Next were Tenten and Tamari, the girl in Lee's team and the girl in Kankuro's team. While they fought, Naruto caught Hinata staring at him 3 times and Sakura and Ino woke up, commending each other's strength and renewing their friendship. The winner is Tamari, Hayate eventually called, and Naruto realized he had spaced out during the fight. Naruto looked down at the floor and saw that Tamari's fan was open, showing 3 purple dots and Tenten wa covered with scratches. There were 2 scrolls and several dozen ninja tools around, and Naruto could guess how Tenten fought but not Tamari. The next fight was Shikamaru and the sound ninja girl named Kintsuchi. Both walked into the ring and Shikamaru's side, clearly not pleased about fighting a girl. The proctor told them to begin and Shikamaru instantly tried to catch her with his shadow possession jutsu with no success. Kin dodged sideways and threw 2 senbon at him, both having bells attached to the back ends. He ducked under them and they stuck into the wall. Bells? Shikamaru questioned. Let me guess, next you'll throw senbon with bells at the same time as ones without. I'll be supposed to react to the ones with bells but will be hit by the silent ones, right? Thanks for the heads up. You sure do talk a lot, don't you? Kin questioned, throwing more senbon, this time free of bells. Just as he stood, the bells on the first 2 senbon began to ring. He turned to look and saw a nearly unnoticeable string attached to each, making them ring. Threads. Shikamaru thought, then realized his mistake and began to turn back around. Oh man. Too late. Kin said, throwing 2 more senbon and hitting him with enough force to throw him backward. Shikamaru. Ino shouted. Not yet. Naruto smirked. He may be lazy but he's not weak. Up and at him. He stood and pulled the senbon out of his arm. 1 inch higher and that would have been a fatal hit, Shikamaru noted. Okay, now I get a turn. Sorry, that was your turn, Kin sneered, tugging the threads again and making the bells ring. Shikamaru didn't turn to look this time, but this time, his head became clouded and he felt nauseous. What's going on? Shikamaru groaned before falling to his knees. You see, you don't ever ask for whom the bell tolls, because it tolls for thee, Kin stated cryptically. This bell sends off a peculiar sound vibration that travels to the outer and inner, then directly to the brain. First comes paralysis, then you'll start hallucinating. Shikamaru groaned and covered his ears. It won't work, Kin stated. You can't block the sound out once it's in your head. It's useless. Shikamaru looked up at her, but suddenly there were dozens. I can't tell which one is real, Shikamaru groaned. You can't move your arms or legs, all of the kin said at once. And even if you could, you wouldn't know which one of us to throw your shadow at. Face it, you're cooked, little man. All of them held up 3 senbon and grinned. I'm going to cook you nice and slow over a hot fire, Kin said, tugging on the thread again. You think it's that easy, huh? Shikamaru questioned. Kin responded by throwing the senbon. 2 stuck into his forearms, and 1 into his shoulder. That was 3. Next time I'll throw 5, Kin stated. Each time a couple more, till you end up looking like a hedgehog. Stop playing games, why don't ya? If you're so tough, get it over with, stop wasting my time. I'm sorry, so you're not a fan of my slow and painful method, huh? Kin questioned, tugging the threads again. Fine, we'll do it the quick way then. And painful. She held up 3 more senbon and grinned. Suddenly, Shikamaru gasped and Kin blinked in surprise, struggling to move her hand. Huh, Kin gasped. What's going on? Can't move my arm. Hey, looks like my lame shadow jutsu was a success after all, Shikamaru grinned, standing. What? Kin gasped. But you haven't thrown any shadows, I made sure of it. You really still don't see it? Shikamaru grinned. What do you mean? Kin questioned. Look at that threat you're holding, Shikamaru stated. Don't you find it strange that it would even cast a shadow at this height? Of course you didn't notice it because you were focused on other things, like killing me. I stretched my shadow out along the line of that thread and followed it all the way back. Now I'm attached to you. He raised his hand, pointing at her, and she copied him, shaking with the effort to resist. And now? Kin questioned. So we mirror each other's movements, so what? A cute trick, but what do you gain by it? Man, you're annoying, shut up and watch. Shikamaru growled, reaching down and drawing a shuriken, which she also did. You must be inside. Kin gasped. If you throw that shuriken at me, you'll just be attacking yourself. Makes it kind of interesting, doesn't it? Shikamaru questioned. You wouldn't. You couldn't. Kin shouted, beginning to panic as both of them drew the shuriken back. Like a game of chicken, let's see who ducks first. Shikamaru shouted, throwing it. You're crazy. Kin shouted, also throwing it. Just before it hit, Shikamaru bent over backward, quickly, catching himself on the floor as the shuriken passed under him. Big deal, I'll do that too. Kin thought as she began to bend backward. However, before she got even halfway, her head smashed into the wall and the shuriken stuck into the wall above her. And that's what I call using your head, Shikamaru grinned. The wise shinobi carefully scouts the physical layout of the battlefield and never loses sight of his position on it. That was her problem. I kept her so focused on me, she didn't notice the wall inches behind her head. So when we both dodged backward, kabong. Now who's hearing bells? Winner of the 6th match, Shikamaru Nara, Hayate stated. Ino began cheering and Shikamaru returned to his team while Dosu took Kin back to the other sound ninja. The screen began to cycle again and stopped on Naruto and Kiba. You've got to be kidding me, Naruto groaned. Can't I even have a challenge? Would you prefer Orochimaru? Sakura questioned. Hell no, Naruto said, paling. I'll take the Suna kid. Naruto and Kiba dropped into the ring, Kiba looking a bit nervous and Akamaru was shaking slightly. We can take him, Kiba reassured him. This'll be fun. Speak for yourself, Naruto grinned, crouching and placing his hand on the ground. Whenever you're ready. Alright, Hayate said. Begin. Seals instantly shot out from under Naruto's hand, covering the floor in perfect alternating rows that formed perfect 4-sided diamonds with 1-inch sides. What the? Kiba began but stopped, seeing the interested look in Kurenai's expression. Alright, be ready, Akamaru. For those of you who recognize my jutsu, Naruto called. You probably already know who I am. For those of you who don't, watch carefully. See if you can keep up. Kiba hesitated for a moment before shaking his head and shooting forward in a blur. Just as he swung at Naruto, Naruto jumped, teleporting to a seal beside Akamaru and began to pet the dog. Akamaru jumped, crying out in surprise and spraying all over the floor, running over to Kiba as Kiba looked at Naruto in shock. But that's, no one is. Kiba was at a loss for words while those on the upper level were even worse off. He's so fast, Lee gaped. I didn't even see him move. And you won't, Guy muttered quietly enough that Kiba and Akamaru couldn't hear even with their heightened senses. Why? Lee questioned, just as quietly. He's not moving, Guy stated. He's teleporting to the seals. He put that many down so that Kiba couldn't escape anywhere on the floor. That's impossible, Shino stated. My insects can't even track his movements. So it's that kind of jutsu. It's the fourth Hokage's, Hinata whispered, barely loud enough for Shino to hear. That's right, Shino agreed. You know how right. I think so, Hinata nodded. That's not just a movement trick, is it? Kiba questioned. Maybe. Naruto shrugged before making several hand seals thanking Minato for teaching him the teleportation barrier. Then, Naruto held a kunai out in reverse grip with the flat of the blade facing Kiba. Fetch doggies, Naruto grinned. Kiba growled and charged at him, leaping at him and hitting a barrier as 6 lines of seals spread away from him a few feet. Kiba passed into the barrier instantly, disappearing, and Naruto held the kunai out with both hands open and grinned as Kiba appeared behind Akamaru, tackling him instead of Naruto and then looking around in shock and confusion. Was that a genjutsu? Kiba questioned. No way, Lee gasped. You can't touch me, Naruto grinned. Give up, my next move will be an attack. Akamaru stood, now shaking badly, and Kiba picked him up. I'll handle this, buddy, Kiba smiled, tossing him up to Hinata. All right, Naruto. You're good. Let's see what you can do. Naruto grinned and put his kunai away, bowing. As he reached a 45-degree angle, he jumped into a front flip, teleporting to a seal behind Kiba and bringing his feet down on Kiba's head, smashing him into the ground, then teleported back to the seal he had been at, finishing his bow. Kiba groaned and stood, looking around and seeing Naruto bowing. He instantly blurred forward and swiped at Naruto, but Naruto leaned back out of the way and teleported to the ground, laying on his back and smashed both into Kiba's stomach, launching him to the ceiling. He crashed into it, then fell and landed on his left shoulder. Everyone heard it break and Naruto winced and walked over, helping Kiba up. Ready to give up? Naruto questioned as Kiba stood. Suddenly, Kiba had him lifted off the ground by the throat and was grinning. You're a fool, Kiba grinned. You should never let your guard down. Naruto created a clone who shoved Kiba. The moment they were moving, Naruto teleported to a seal beside the wall and took Kiba with him. Both of them crashed into the wall, hard, and Kiba dropped Naruto, who teleported away. Ow! Naruto groaned, rubbing his head where he hit the wall. Just quit, Kiba. No, Kiba groaned. One move left. Kiba crouched, growling, then leapt forward, spinning and speeding up until he formed a long gray drill-like streak shooting toward Naruto much faster than he could before. Tunneling Fang! Kiba shouted as he shot forward. Naruto jumped back, teleporting out of the way and landed on his feet. Just as he did, Kiba tunneled into the ground and the room began to shake. After a moment, Naruto jumped as Kiba exploded up below him. Naruto teleported out of the way, landing in a roll, then pushed himself up in time for Kiba to hit him, slamming into the wall and continuing to spin against his torso, his claws slashing most of his body, leaving massive gashes. Naruto finally managed to teleport out of the way, allowing Kiba to drill into the wall, and began making hand seals, drawing his kunai just in time for Kiba to explode through the wall directly behind Naruto. Naruto leapt forward, entering his own barrier and coming out in a seal on the far side of the room and hitting the wall beside the hole Kiba had made on his way out just as Kiba hit the barrier. Naruto sent him to a seal in the furthest corner and Kiba appeared there, first shooting toward the statue of the hands but spinning and shooting at Naruto again. Naruto finally groaned and teleported to a seal below Kiba, smashing his feet into Kiba and launching him into the ceiling again, where Kiba began spinning again. Tunneling Fang! Kiba shouted. Fine, Naruto growled, swarming the floor with clones who began swarming around and past each other before stopping and all forming a Rasengan, barely strong enough to hurt Kiba but enough to slow him down enough for Naruto to knock him out. Come and get us. Kiba shot into the swarm of clones, moving too fast to be hit. Finally, one of the clones managed to place a seal on Kiba and Naruto teleported to it, slamming his Rasengan into his back. Rasengan! Naruto shouted as Kiba slammed into the ground, disoriented. Then, the remaining Narutos swarmed him and all punched him once before disappearing. When they all left, Naruto staggered away, out of energy as Kiba staggered to his feet, about to black out. You, son of a bitch, Kiba growled. You would know about bitches, wouldn't you? Naruto grinned and Kiba growled, charging forward again. Let's finish this, Naruto said, hurling his kunai at Kiba. The kunai missed his head by millimeters. Kiba grinned, but suddenly, Naruto was above him and slammed both feet into Kiba's back, slamming him into the ground. Both collapsed and began to breathe hard and struggle to move. Everyone waited in a dead silence to see if either could stand, and after a moment, Naruto managed to push himself up. I really hope you can't move, Naruto groaned. I'm finished. Shame, Kiba panted. So, as Kiba is unable to continue, I'm declaring Naruto the winner, Hayate declared. You might want to get those cuts looked at. I'll be okay, Naruto panted. Anyone have a soldier pill? One of the medics that came to collect Kiba tossed him one and he ate it, then walked up the stairs to his team. As he was passing Hinata and Shino, Shino spoke up. That was an impressive teleportation jutsu, Shino commented. It's the fourth Hokage's, isn't it? Yes, Naruto nodded. It takes a lot more chakra than I thought. You did well to defeat Kiba after being hit directly by that attack for that long, Shino stated. Normally it would just be a glancing blow that throws you. You really ticked him off. Ain't I lucky? Naruto said sarcastically. See, congratulations and Naruto, Hinata finally spoke up. Why, you were amazing. Thanks. Naruto smiled. Kiba was a lot faster than I thought. If not for my teleportation jutsu, I would have lost. I don't think so, Hinata stated, blushing bright red. Thanks for your confidence, but you're wrong, Naruto smiled. Hinata may be right, Shino stated. Had Kiba kept Akamaru with him, you would have been torn apart. Naruto shrugged and returned to his team as the screen selected another fight. Neji and Hinata. Naruto's stomach dropped when he saw the panicked look on Hinata and Kurenai's faces and the smug look on Neji's. Hinata was doomed. The two Hyugas moved to the lower level, which Kakashi had largely repaired with Earth-style jutsus for the remaining fights. I never thought that you and I would have to face each other, Hinata, Neji commented. Nor I, brother, Hinata replied. Brother? Sakura questioned. I guess they're not cousins after all. They're both descended from the Hyuga clan, Kakashi stated. One of the most ancient and honorable clans of the Hidden Leaf Village, not actually brother and sister. Okay, but they are related, right? Sakura questioned. Yes, in the way that branches of a great tree are related to its trunk, Kakashi stated. Technically, they're more like cousins. Hinata's from the main house and Neji is from a branch family, Naruto summed up. Pretty much, Kakashi agreed. So, it's like a family feud, Sakura stated. Kind of, Kakashi nodded. They're starting, Naruto stated. Alright, you may begin when ready, Hayate stated. Before we do this, a word of advice, Neji offered. Hinata, listen to me. Withdraw now. You know you were never meant to be a ninja. Hinata's eyes widened in surprise and hurt, but Neji wasn't done. You're too kind and gentle, Neji explained. You seek harmony and avoid conflict. You allow yourself to be easily swayed by others. Admit it, you have no confidence. You feel inferior to everyone else here. It would have been better for you to simply remain a genin. But to register for the Chunin exams you need a team of 3 people. You never even wanted to take part in these exams, but Shino and Kiba did, and you couldn't bear to let your teammates down, could you? No. Hinata practically pleaded. You're wrong. You're wrong. I had to find out. I did it because I wanted to see if I could change. After several moments, Neji said, Hinata, you are the pampered offspring of the Hyuga's main branch. What? Hinata said in surprise. People can't change no matter how hard they try, Neji stated coldly. Hinata's eyes were instantly filled with hurt while her face showed shock. She believed him, at least in part. They can't run away from their true nature, Neji continued. A failure will always be a failure. Naruto gripped the handrail tightly, nearing the end of his patience. People are judged by their true nature, Neji stated. It is the way of the world. That is why we have an elite, and why we have outcasts. We can change our physical appearance. We can improve our skills with training and study. But ultimately, we are judged by what we cannot change. What can't be changed, must be endured. We are who we are, Hinata. And we must live with it. By now, Hinata was on the verge of tears, and Naruto was keeping his teeth clamped shut and using the teleportation barrier in front of him that his father had set up as an excuse not to jump down and beat the shit out of Neji himself. Just as I must live with the face that you were born into the elite of our clan, while I am from a lesser branch, Neji stated. I understand these things because I see the world clearly, with my Byakugan. Despite your brave words, what you're really thinking is that you'd like to run as far away from here as you can. No, Hinata cried. You're wrong. You're wrong about me. Byakugan. Sakura questioned Kakashi. It's the Kekkei Genkei, or bloodline trait of the Hyuga clan, Kakashi stated. Naruto turned back to the Hyugas in time to see Neji form a hand seals and say, Byakugan. Veins began to stand out at the sides of his face and smaller ones in his iris and his pupils became more distinct. The simple act of him activating his Byakugan was enough to make Hinata shake in fear. After a moment, she looked away, unable to look him in the eye. My eyes cannot be deceived, Neji finally said. A moment ago, in the slightest of movements, your eyes drifted to the upper left corner of the room. I saw, at that moment, you were thinking of your past. Bitter past. And then, almost immediately after, your gaze drifted to the lower right. It was a mere flicker of the eyes, but to me it revealed all of your mental and physical suffering. You're seeing your old self, and wondering if your life has prepared you for this moment. You're picturing the outcome of the battle. You see yourself losing. Hinata gasped and Naruto growled in frustration. And the way you're holding your arms in front of your body like that. Neji sneered. It tells me that you're trying to build a wall between us to keep me at bay. You want me to keep from reading the deepest recesses of your mind. And why? Because everything I've said is true. Shall I go on? Kakashi rested on hand on Naruto's shoulder, sensing just how angry he was getting. That familiar gesture of putting your finger to your lips, Neji continued. I know that it's a desperate attempt to suppress your rising panic. Made all the more desperate by the fact that you know it's futile. It's all futile, Hinata. You are what you are. Whether you admit it or not. You already know. Enough already. Naruto finally shouted. Who the hell gave you the right to tell her what she can and can't be? Just shut the up and mind your own damn business. You call her a coward, but she's not the one who's trying to talk you out of actually fighting. Come on, Hinata. Show him just how strong you are. Hinata stared at him for a moment before her head fell. Neji glared up at Naruto, then looked back at Hinata and his eyes widened. A moment later, Hinata looked up at him with a determined stare. If you don't forfeit the match, you know what will happen, Neji warned. Hinata responded by beginning to make hand seals. I won't run away, Hinata thought. Never again. No more hiding. She finished her seals and activated her Byakugan. Naruto grinned and gripped the railing, no longer in frustration but in excitement. She took a stance and said, Defend yourself, my brother. Neji mirrored her stance and said, Very well then. After a couple minutes, they both darted forward and Hinata thrust her hand toward her, palm open, and Neji blocked it, careful not to touch her hand. As she threw her hand forward, Chakra shot out of it in a small burst. They spent several minutes dodging and blocking each other's attacks until Neji slipped off balance and Hinata threw an attack instantly. Neji stepped backward, barely avoiding a shot to his side. They both took a step back and after a moment, they returned to trading blows, careful to avoid taking damage from each other. After several more seconds, Hinata very nearly hit him again and Neji jumped back. After a few more seconds, they continued and after a few blows, Hinata stepped forward for a blow to the heart and both of them stopped. No one moved but everyone could see that Neji had dodged or blocked the attack. Did she get him? Lee questioned. Yes. Sakura nodded and was about to start cheering but stopped when she realized that Naruto was holding the railing in a death grip. You didn't see him attack too, did you? Naruto growled. Who hit who? After a moment, Hinata leaned back, coughing up blood and everyone gasped, except Naruto who closed his eyes, having already seen how it had happened. Neji's left hand had two fingers against Hinata's attacking arm where he had used a blast of chakra to stop her attack while his right arm had delivered a direct hit to her heart. So that's it, huh? Neji questioned. That's all there is to the main branch's power. I'm not done yet. Hinata thought using her left hand to knock Neji's right away and threw an attack at his head. However, before she could hit him, he caught her wrist and hit a spot beside her elbow. Then, he pulled her sleeve up and revealed several burnt spots along her arm. All perfectly round and bright red. But, you mean, Hinata gasped. All this time you. That's right, Neji interrupted, voice cold. I could see your chakra points the whole time. What's he talking about? Naruto questioned. On the chakra network there are 316 chakra centers, or chakra points, and each are only about the size of the head of a pin, Kakashi explained. Hitting one directly can affect the flow of chakra, either halting it or increasing it, depending on how the attacker strikes the chakra points. Theoretically, doing so allows one to gain complete control of their opponent's chakra flow. But these chakra points, they're undetectable, even to my Sharingan eye. And even beyond the ability to see the chakra points, he can target them accurately, even during intense battle. Suddenly Neji hit Hinata again and launched her backward. Look Hinata, I'm completely out of your league and that won't change, Neji stated. That is what separates the elites from the failures. You may not like it but it's a fact. From the instant you said you wouldn't run anymore, your fate was sealed. You were destined for failure. And now, you're consumed with hopelessness. Now this is your last warning Hinata. Forfeit this match. Hinata, now on her hands and knees, struggled to say before pushing herself up, more blood running down her chin. I never go back, on my word. Because that is my ninja way. Naruto blinked in surprise, remembering telling his class the same thing a long time ago. Naruto snapped back to reality to see Hinata look up at him and smile, then lower her gaze to Neji as he Byakugan reactivated. Bring it on, Neji said, reactivating his own. Suddenly she doubled over, coughing up more blood. Naruto gripped the rail tightly as Neji took his fighting pose again. Naruto looked around and saw that everyone was giving the Hyugas the same look. The fight was over. Hinata had lost. They all knew it. No, Naruto whispered to himself. Don't risk your life to prove your point. You can't win. Hinata sprinted forward again, attacking Neji as before but still couldn't hurt him. This time, she wasn't using gentle fist, she was simply trying to hit him. And still, she couldn't. Finally, after about 5 minutes, Neji hit Hinata's arm away, then slammed his hand into the bottom of her jaw, launching her yet again. Hinata stood and they sprinted forward, attacking Neji again, but he knocked her attack aside, then delivered his own along with a massive blast of chakra to her heart yet again. Hinata coughed up blood again as her knees gave out and she fell forward. Everyone gasped and Naruto finally released the railing, leaning back against the wall, feeling very queasy and not sure why. You just don't get it, do you? Neji questioned. Your strikes were ineffective from the very start. You're finished. He deactivated his Byakugan and stared down at her in disgust. It's too bad, but after that blow to the heart, Hinata is done, Might Guy stated. Don't say that. Naruto snapped. What the hell are the medical nin here for, huh? They can only help if she concedes of Hayate calls it, Guy stated. I'm sorry Naruto, but Hinata's either got to break her word, or die. Hayate finally stepped forward and looked down at Hinata. Since she's unable to continue, the winner of this match is. No, Hinata managed to say as she began to push herself up again, barely able to move. Finally, she reached her feet and stood, barely conscious. What do you think you're doing? Neji questioned. If you continue to fight, you'll die. After a few minutes, Neji finally activated his Byakugan and Hinata began stumbling forward. I'm far from finished, Hinata stated. Give up the tough guy act, Neji ordered. I can tell you're barely standing. You've been carrying a very heavy burden, having been born to the main branch of the Hyuga clan. And you've cursed and blamed yourself for being weak. But look, people can't change the way they are. That's just how it is. Just accept defeat and you won't have to suffer anymore. No, you're wrong, brother, Hinata panted. You've got it backwards. You see, I can tell that you're the one. You're suffering much more than I. I what? Neji questioned, not understanding. You are the one who's all torn up about the fat of the main and side branches of the Hyuga clan, Hinata stated. Neji suddenly growled in frustration and charged forward, shouting in rage. Neji, no! Hayate shouted, running to intercept him but not able to run fast enough. The match is over. Oh man. Kakashi, Guy, and Kurenai all moved to help Hayate, but before anyone could take a step, Neji reached the last intact teleportation seal. Naruto reached just as he threw his attack at Hinata. Naruto teleported to the seal, appearing between the two Hyugas and catching Neji's hand, taking the attack full force from his arm into his torso. The Jonin and Hayate all froze, and after a moment, Naruto turned his head and spit blood onto the ground before glaring at Neji. The match is over, Naruto stated coldly. You want to fight from here, you fight me. Neji. Guy shouted. Get a hold of yourself. You promised me you wouldn't let this whole head family thing get you riled up. Get out of my way, Naruto, Neji ordered, ignoring Guy. Naruto narrowed his eyes and squeezed Neji's hand. Neji screamed as Naruto pressed his bones to the point that they were about to break. Neji responded by sending 3 quick strikes to Naruto's heart through his hand, then hitting him directly in the heart with his free hand. Naruto grunted and kicked Neji, sending him flying back before spitting out more blood. Guy caught Neji and Kurenai put him to sleep with a genjutsu just as both Naruto and Hinata collapsed, Naruto's heart completely stopping. The medics rushed forward and began to work on Naruto while Hinata was rushed off to the ER. After several minutes of trying and failing to save Naruto, the medics all turned to Minato at the same time, their question clear. I did not have you given to him to be dormant, Minato said to no one in particular. Do you intend to die? Suddenly, Naruto's body arched upward as a wave of red chakra shot off of it and his heart pounded so loudly that they all heard it. Then, the body fell limp again and a medic checked for a pulse, finding a weak one. He and another medic instantly began to keep Naruto's heart beating while he too was rushed away. Minato sent a clone to tell Kushina he was on his way to the hospital. Then the next fight was chosen. Naruto opened his eyes and groaned. His whole body ached. Most of it was from Neji, but some of it was from the medics that saved him. He looked around his tiny hospital room and sighed. The walls were all bare and white, his bed was painted white with white sheets, comforter, and pillow, white door, and the heart monitor was also painted white with the exception of the screen, which showed a normal heart rate. There was only the one bed and 2 beds, one of which was taken by his mother. He sat up, wincing at the pain but deciding that he had rested enough. It had been 3 days already. Minato had informed him that they had been given a month to train. You should be resting, Kushina stated, opening her eyes and sitting up. We both know I was mostly healed yesterday, Naruto smirked. You know better than anyone. That's true, Kushina grinned. So, What are you going to do? I was planning on visiting Hinata then having you get me the heck out of here, Naruto grinned. No one's visited me yet so I figure they won't mind if I leave. Fair enough, Kushina sighed. I'll go tell them that Minato said you could leave. She left and Naruto stood and dressed himself quickly. Then, he left his room and walked down the hall to Hinata's. He looked inside but stopped when he saw that Hinata's mother was sitting beside her looking worried. Hinata was awake but looked tired and both had dark circles under their eyes. After a moment, of them sitting in silence, Hinata's mother looked up and saw Naruto. She smiled and stood walking out past him. Don't be too long, she requested. Hinata needs her rest. But I won't refuse the man who saved her life. I won't keep her too long, Naruto promised. She smiled and nodded then left and Naruto stepped into the room. Naruto. Hinata gasped. You should be resting. My injuries weren't as bad as yours, Naruto lied. I'm pretty much healed already. Besides, I wanted to see how you were doing. Hinata's face turned crimson but she nodded, smiling. He sat beside her and smiled as well. The doctor said I'd be able to leave in about 3 weeks, Hinata stated. It would be less time, but my heart had almost stopped when I got here. Have you heard how the rest of the fights went? Naruto questioned. No, Hinata stated shaking her head. I have a question, if you don't mind. Not at all, Naruto smiled. Are you the 4th Hokage's son? Hinata questioned. I am, Naruto nodded. So, why are you Naruto Uzumaki and not Naruto Namikaze? Hinata questioned. When I was young, it was so that no one would know I was his son and use me to target him, Naruto explained. I couldn't defend myself and he couldn't protect me and be Hokage at the same time. Once I was older, we just never bothered to change my name because we knew who I was and if anyone had asked, I would have told them who my family was. Hinata nodded just as Sakura walked in. There you are Naruto, Sakura said exasperated. Sorry I never visited but I was recovering from lack of chakra. Meaning you were with Sasuke, Naruto stated. How did the other fights go? There were only 2 left, Sakura stated. Choji fought that sound ninja guy with the gauntlet that makes sound from wind, Dosu, I think. Dosu beat Choji easily. Lee fought that Gaara guy from the sand village, the one with the gourd. The gourd apparently holds sand that Gaara fights with. At first Lee couldn't touch Gaara because the sand protects him. Lee couldn't get through. Then Lee removed some massive leg weights and began to kick Gaara's. He beat the hell out of Gaara and eventually did some jutsu that he called the 5th gate or something and became even stronger and faster. But then when he delivered the final blow, Gaara fell away as a hollow sand statue that Gaara, the real one, called sand armor. Then Gaara beat Lee by using sand to blow crush his left arm and leg and try to kill him. If Guy Sensei hadn't intervened, Lee would be dead. Gaara's a monster. Is Lee okay? Naruto questioned. He's alive, Sakura stated. I doubt he'll be able to do anything at all for a long time though. Naruto nodded and Sakura sat beside him. Naruto, Minato suddenly said walking into the room. Sorry to interrupt but you need to train a lot if you're going to have to fight Gaara. Naruto nodded, hearing exactly how serious Minato was. I'll see you around, I guess, Naruto smiled. Hinata smiled as well and nodded and Naruto left. The moment he was gone, Hinata finally stopped fighting it and fainted. Naruto followed Minato back to the house and found Kushina waiting in a uniquely sour mood. Is something wrong? Naruto questioned. Your mother doesn't want you to continue in the exams, Minato sighed. She also doesn't want you to be within 100 feet of Jiraiya sensei. Oh, Naruto nodded remembering them mentioning Minato's old teacher. When is he supposed to be here? He should be already, Minato sighed. I'm going to find him. For now, I suppose you'll have to busy yourself. I suggest you go to the spa and practice your water walking. Naruto nodded and left. Minato also left and began to search for Jiraiya while Naruto went to the one hot spring that required a bathing suit. He walked out to the edge of the water and stepped onto it but the moment he put his weight on that foot, he fell through the water. He stood up and blinked in surprise, then climbed back out and tried again. He lasted a second, but still fell through. He growled in frustration and continued to try, always failing. Normally he could last about a minute. He couldn't figure out why it was so hard now. After a few minutes he finally leaned against the side and looked around. There was a fairly fat man with long spiky white hair peeking at the women's side and writing something on a notepad, but other than that the hot spring was deserted. "Hey pervert," Naruto called. "What are you doing?" "I'm no pervert," the old man huffed, turning around to glare at Naruto. "I'm the one and only great toad sage, Jiraiya." "You're a pervert," Naruto stated. "Pervy sage sounds good. You dare insult me?" Jiraiya raged. Summoning jutsu. He bit his thumb and slammed it into the ground and summoned a toad the size of a small horse. The toad's tongue shot out and Naruto jumped over it. Suddenly something inside his head clicked and he raised an eyebrow. "Jiraiya huh?" Naruto questioned, landing beside the water. "As in, the legendary Sannin. The fourth Hokage's teacher." "That's right," Jiraiya sneered. "And you are?" Naruto ducked under the tongue and grinned. "I'm his son," Naruto grinned. "You're?" "Yeah right," Jiraiya grinned. His son would know the teleportation jutsu. "Catch," Naruto said, throwing a kunai at him while dodging the tongue again. Jiraiya caught the kunai just as Naruto appeared beside him with another kunai to his throat. "Impressive, Naruto," Jiraiya smirked. "You're definitely your father's son." "There you are Jiraiya," Minato sighed, appearing beside Naruto using his son's kwani. "Naruto, I would like to introduce you to your godfather. He's going to help me train you." "Cool," Naruto grinned. "What are you going to teach me?" "For starters, the summoning jutsu," Jiraiya stated. "Then, we'll see." Naruto bit his thumb and slammed his hand into the ground, but once again the only thing that appeared was a tadpole. Jiraiya and Minato both sighed and gave each other a knowing look. "We could always try the other method," Jiraiya suggested. "No," Minato stated flatly. "Summoning jutsu," Naruto shouted, slamming his hand down. This time, he summoned a massive tadpole the size of a horse with 2 legs on one side of its body. However, this one was dead. "He is your son," Jiraiya pointed out, referring to Minato's own difficulty in learning to summon. "Do it," Minato finally sighed. "Just be careful about it." Jiraiya nodded and walked over to Naruto. "We're going to try something else, since there's only a couple days left and you still can't successfully summon," Jiraiya sighed. "It starts with lunch." "Cool," Naruto grinned. "By the way, did I ever thank you for removing the seal Jiraiya placed on me?" "No," Jiraiya smirked. "But don't try to butter me up. I'm buying lunch anyway." Naruto cheered and Minato chuckled, then sighed. After lunch, Jiraiya took Naruto to the top of the Hokage monument, where a massive trench, almost big enough to be a canyon, dropped into the mountain so far that Naruto couldn't see the bottom. The sides were lined with massive spikes and the trench was easily 50 feet across. "What do you see down there?" Jiraiya questioned, pointing into the trench. Naruto leaned forward to look and Jiraiya shoved him. Naruto tumbled in, flipping and spinning through the air. After a moment, he righted himself and looked up, seeing that it was already too late to throw a kunai and teleport, plus his momentum would carry over and his landing would be fatal. Sighing, he bit his thumb and wiped the blood on his hand, then held it below him. "Summoning jutsu," Naruto shouted as smoke shot out of his hand, flooding the trench below him. Suddenly, it blew away and revealed a massive toad wearing a happy vest, a massive tanto, and holding a pipe in his mouth. The toad held its arms and legs out against the side of the trench, slowing their descent to a stop with Naruto landing on his head. "Who are you?" the toad questioned. "Where are we?" "We're in a massive trench in the Hokage monument and I'm Naruto Uzumaki, son of the 4th Hokage Minato Namikaze," Naruto stated. "I summoned you." "I know that," the toad stated. "So you're Minato's boy huh? Name's Gamabunta. Pleasure to meet you," Naruto greeted. "Let's get out of this trench. I think Jiraiya should be reprimanded for throwing me in here." "Jiraiya?" Gamabunta questioned. "I owe him for cheating me." Gamabunta suddenly lowered himself before launching himself upward and out of the pit, landing beside it and looking around before Minato appeared beside Naruto. Hello Gamabunta, Minato greeted. You're free to leave if you want, we were just teaching Naruto to summon. Gamabunta nodded and shot his tongue out, sending Jiraiya flying, then disappeared. Minato and Naruto landed beside Jiraiya and Naruto looked to Minato for instruction. Next we'll do wind-style jutsus, Minato stated. I'm out, Jiraiya smirked. I'm fire and earth type. It's alright, Minato smirked. I know of a few, even though I have never successfully pulled any of them off perfectly. But I can do well enough to give you some idea of it. Naruto nodded and they returned to their training field and Minato began showing Naruto some jutsus. Kakashi had agreed to show Naruto a few but had never actually gotten around to it. Naruto picked it up quickly, successfully mastering both wind-style vacuum blade and wind-style air bullets. He struggled with the wind sword jutsu, however, as every time he tried to create one it damaged his hand. That's enough for today, Minato eventually sighed on the day before the final exam. We'll have Kushina heal your hand when we get home. Tomorrow you have a tournament to win. Naruto nodded and they returned to their house and found Kushina waiting. She healed his hand and gave Minato a dirty look for trying to teach him such a dangerous jutsu, but Minato just shrugged and smiled. He should learn it, Minato stated. Now, what's for dinner? Kushina sighed and made their dinner, then sent both to bed. The next day would be a long one, for all of them. Naruto stood beside Shikamaru and looked around. Sasuke was late and his fight against Gaara was first. After some time, Minato finally announced that Sasuke's fight would be delayed to give him a chance to get there. That meant Naruto would be going first against Neji. The others all retreated to the stands, leaving only Naruto and Neji with the new proctor, Genma Shiranui, standing between them. The rules are the same as the preliminaries, Genma stated. Try not to maim each other too badly. You're going to lose, Neji stated after Genma had left the ring. I am destined to be second to the main branch and you are destined to lose to me. You have had the easy life and even with that jutsu of yours, you are destined to fail. Don't give me that destiny crap. Naruto spat. I'm going to kick your without my teleportation jutsu. I'm going to destroy you. Because you feel you are better than me? Neji questioned. Because you deserve it after you tried to kill Hinata, Naruto stated. She's your family. And a fellow Leaf Village shinobi. The last thing you should do is try to kill her. If you think you stand a chance, why haven't you attacked yet? Neji questioned. Naruto grinned and began making hand seals. Wind style, air bullets. Naruto said before exhaling dozens of barely visible spheres of chakra-laced air at Neji. Neji activated his Byakugan in order to see the jutsu just in time for 3 to hit him in his shoulders and left leg. All 3 tore through his body, but Naruto had made them only gazing shots, so they only left scratches. Neji still flew back, bouncing and sliding over the ground before pushing himself up and groaning. You should be thankful I didn't aim at you, Naruto stated. I could have killed you. You're strong, Neji sneered. I didn't expect you to know such a powerful jutsu. Oh please, Naruto scoffed, pulling out a kunai and creating a vacuum blade on it. I know so many more than that. Neji charged and Naruto fired several more air bullets without the hand signs. Neji dodged these and Naruto swung at him with his vacuum blade. Neji dodged it and Naruto grinned and created a clone who formed a wind sword and grinned at Neji, even while blood ran down its arm. That jutsu is, you wouldn't dare, Neji growled. Try me. Naruto grinned, letting his vacuum blade disappear and putting the kunai away. You wouldn't, Neji sneered. Coward. Naruto grinned as his clone pulled its arm back to throw the wind sword. Stop. A voice that Naruto instantly recognized shouted just as the clone began to throw the jutsu. The clone spun, sending the jutsu into the wall instead, then disappeared, and Naruto looked up into the stands where Hinata was breathing a sigh of relief. Don't kill him, Hinata shouted. You're not him. Naruto stared at her for a moment, then back at Neji. Neji saw that his irises had turned red with slit pupils, but he was inning now. Congratulations, Naruto sneered. You'll survive this fight. Then, Naruto sent a massive wave of clones at him. Neji suddenly began spinning and destroying the clones. He only stopped when his hand hit a Rasengan. The explosion sent him flying into a wall and badly burned his arm, but Neji still pushed himself up. Withdraw, Naruto commanded. The next one will be at full power. You, Neji panted. Naruto grinned and threw a kunai at Neji. Neji threw himself out of the way and out of range of Naruto, should he teleport to the kunai. When he stood, a Naruto suddenly exploded out of the ground, smashing his fist into Neji's jaw and sending him sailing into the air. When he was at the top of his arc, Naruto leapt up to him and smashed both fists into his stomach, sending him crashing back down to the ground. Neji coughed up blood but still pushed himself up. You just don't quit, do you? Naruto questioned. Never, Neji stated, shaking his head. Not against you. You all kill. How? Naruto questioned, his eyes returning to normal. You haven't touched me once this fight. You are more powerful than any genin in this exam, except perhaps Gaara, Neji stated. I lied when I said you were destined for failure. You are destined to succeed at everything. Everything, except protecting those you love. My father died when I was very young. The main branch's head, Hinata's father Hiashi Hyuga, forced my father, his brother, to trade places with him during an assassination attempt, resulting in my father, Sedat Hand Hiashi becoming clan head, when my father was originally meant to be the heir. I was cheated out of my place as the heir of the clan by both Destiny and Hiashi. I am meant to always be a servant to the main branch. However, I will be taking revenge on them just as soon as I finish with you. And what, pray tell, am I destined for? Naruto questioned. Where does my destiny lead me? To an early grave as an arrogant bastard controlled by his emotions, Neji grinned. Right alongside myself. Naruto grinned and shrugged, then created 3 clones, sending them at Neji. Neji charged at the clones, wiping them out. Quickly, then ducking under Naruto's Rasengan. 8 trigrams, 2 palms, 4 palms, 8 palms, 16 palms, 32 palms, Neji counted off, hitting Naruto the number of times he said and always on a different chakra point. 64 palms. The final hit sent Naruto flying and he landed in a heap against one of the trees scattered around the arena. Neji smirked, but after a moment, Naruto pushed himself up and tried to create a Rasengan, without success. Don't bother, Neji sneered. I've hit enough chakra points that you won't be using chakra again for several hours. That's what you think, Naruto sneered as Kurama healed him. See, unlike you, I'm not normal. I've got a curse that won't let me fail. If it wasn't for my parents, I would be a complete outcast, never having been taught to fight, never having been taught a single jutsu, not having a single friend. I'd be the same as Gaara is. Did you know I was rejected at first? When I was young, no one knew who I was, so everyone hated me. My parents loved me, but aside from that I had no one. No friends, no other relatives. I was an outcast. Had you known me then, you would have said it was my destiny. But you know what? I changed. So don't give me that destiny crap. I will never allow anyone other than me to control me. And I will never let you outdo me. You are the son of the... Neji began but stopped when Naruto launched dozens of air bullets at him again. He dodged them all, but just as he landed, a second clone exploded out of the ground, this time hitting him in the stomach with a weak Rasengan. The Rasengan left Neji disoriented and Neji simply lay there, dazed. The winner is Naruto, Genma shouted. Neji was carried off the field and Naruto returned to the others. Next was Shino and Kankuro, but Kankuro withdrew before the fight began. After him came Temari and Shikamaru. However, Naruto was distracted by Hinata walking over. Are you okay? Hinata questioned. I'm fine, Naruto smiled. Sorry I tried to kill him. It's alright, Hinata smiled. You didn't. I wanted to though, Naruto said, eyes downcast. And I would have if not for you. Thank you. What happened when your eyes turned red? Hinata questioned. It's a very long story, Naruto sighed. Nothing you need to worry about though. I'm fine. Okay. Hinata smiled then looked past him. Gaara's staring at you. Naruto turned and looked at him and saw that she was right. He was staring at Naruto and grinning. Suddenly Naruto felt the seal holding Kurama throb painfully as Kurama tried to get his attention. I'll be back in a minute, Naruto said distractedly, walking to the stairwell. Once there, he closed his eyes and allowed Kurama to pull him into his mind. Finally, Kurama growled, listen and listen carefully. That kid, his ultimate defense, the sand that protects him, you won't be able to get through it easily, even with your jutsus. You'll never be able to beat him. However, I'm more worried about his control of the sand. He is not the first. The trait is common among the Jinchuriki of the One-Tails, Shukaku. If I'm right, you cannot best him without my help. We'll see, Naruto stated. I'll let you know if I need your help. Be careful, Kurama growled. I don't fancy dying. Naruto returned to the real world and returned to the others just as Shikamaru caught Temari. He took a moment to explain how he caught her then raised their hands. That's it, I give up, Shikamaru called. Everyone fell silent then started shouting. What? Temari asked. What did you say? I used up all my chakra on that shadow possession jutsu, Shikamaru said. I'm good for about another 10 seconds, that's it. Bummer. And here I'd already planned out the next 200 moves in my head. But my chakra is running low. Anyway, if I was to win this thing, it would just mean more work. Then, the winner is Temari, Genma called. And Sasuke still isn't here for his fight, so the fourth Hokage would like to extend his time for another 10 minutes, an Anbu whispered appearing beside him. Genma sighed and nodded then shouted, there will be a 10-minute break before the next fight. Naruto rolled his eyes but smiled and leaned on the railing. They're waiting for Sasuke, right? Hinata questioned. Yes, Naruto nodded. They all really want to see him fight. In all honesty, I really don't. I don't think he can win. Why? Hinata questioned. From what I've heard about Gaara, Sasuke's going to have his-handed to him, Naruto stated. Maybe he'll do well, Hinata said. You don't know for sure. Naruto nodded and was silent. When the 10 minutes was over, Genma sighed as Gaara walked down to the field. As Sasuke is not here, I have no choice but to. He was cut off by a swirl of leaves as Kakashi and Sasuke appeared on the field. Sasuke looked up at Naruto and held up a kunai he had stolen from Naruto and Naruto grinned and teleported to him. Sorry if we kept you waiting, Kakashi said rubbing the back of his head. But, how late are we? I mean, it's not like Sasuke's, well, disqualified or anything, right? Like master like pupil, the proctor said. Even down to your lousy sense of time. Well, what about it? Kakashi asked. You know you were so late that we extended the deadline for you, twice in fact, the proctor said. It's lucky for you we did because you just made it. No, he's not disqualified. Oh, Kakashi said. That's a relief. You had me worried there for a minute. So we're okay. Sasuke, be careful, Naruto warned, voice urgent. I think he may be a Jinchuriki. Sasuke trailed off but nodded glancing at Gaara. I'll be careful. And Naruto, I think Orochimaru may be here somewhere. Naruto nodded and took his kunai, making sure to reflect the sun at his father a few times to warn him that there was a threat then threw it up to the railing beside Hinata and teleported to it. He pulled it out of the railing and looked up at his father who nodded then looked back at Gaara. Alright, the proctor said. The rules for this match are the same as in the preliminaries. The match continues until one of you dies or admits defeat. However, I can stop the match, but that's solely my decision. Gaara laughed a bit and Naruto could guess why. That's what you think, buddy, Naruto said. I'd like to see you try. The proctor raised his hand then swung it down and said, begin. With that, he jumped out of the arena just as sand began to stream out of Gaara's gourd. Sasuke jumped back so that he would have time to react to any attacks. After a moment, Gaara gasped and pressed a hand to his head, groaning. Please, Gaara said. I beg you. Don't get so mad at me. He smiled and began to quiver. Then he looked back up at Sasuke. Mother, Gaara said. Sasuke stared at Gaara in confusion as sand continued to stream out of the gourd and form a cloud over Gaara. Earlier Gaara said. I know. I made you taste such awful blood. I'm so sorry. But this time, I'm sure that it will taste so very good. Gaara suddenly doubled over, gasping again, and the sand fell to the ground around him. His breathing became ragged and he continued to gasp for breath for a few moments before leaning forward and dangling his arms. Then he straightened up enough to look at Sasuke and said, Come on. The sand began to rise around him and rub against itself while swirling, producing a loud roar. Sasuke and Gaara stared at each other for a moment, waiting for the other to move. Here goes, Sasuke said, pulling out 2 shuriken and throwing them. The sand moved in front of it and blocked the shuriken, and a sand clone formed holding the shuriken. Sasuke began to run forward, but the sand clone leaned back and his torso exploded into a wall of sand, shooting at Sasuke. Sasuke jumped over the blast just as it crashed down where he had been a moment before. The clone looked up at him and threw the shuriken, and Sasuke threw 2 more to block the first. As Sasuke landed, he kicked the clone's hands off, then landed on his hand and spun away from the clone long enough to land on his feet and spun, backhanding the clone's throat. His hand stuck halfway through, however, and the sand began to close around his wrist. He tried to pull it out, but it wouldn't budge, so instead he smashed the clone's head with his other hand, destroying it. The sand from the clone exploded in every direction, and Sasuke started forward again as the sand to either side began to rise again. He threw a punch forward and the sand moved to block his fist, but Sasuke grinned, then spun and vanished, reappearing a moment later behind Gaara. Gaara turned toward him as memories of fighting Lee flashed through his head. Sasuke smashed his fist into Gaara's cheek before he could turn all the way around, and Gaara's sand armor cracked as he flew away from Sasuke, the sand following. Both smashed back down and Gaara stood. So that's your sand armor, huh? Sasuke asked. Come on. The audience stared in rapt silence, and Gaara and Sasuke. Come on. Sasuke repeated. Well, if you won't, I will. Sasuke charged at Gaara, who stumbled back a step then crouched, raising the sand to defend himself. When Sasuke reached the sand, he blurred around behind Gaara. Gaara sent the sand at him, but Sasuke spun out of the way and charged again. When he reached Gaara, he kicked him and sent him flying. What's the matter, Gaara? Sasuke asked. Is that all you've got? Gaara stood with the sand forming up around him and his eyes closed. I'm going to tear off all of your armor, Sasuke said, dashing forward again. The sand around Gaara rose in a circle and Sasuke began to run around Gaara in a blur, beginning to make a funnel. Then he flipped over the sand and ran at Gaara. He kicked him in the face, then grabbed the front of his shirt and smashed his knee into his stomach, then jumped back. Gaara fell to his hands and knees and began panting. No one made a sound. Not even the wind was still blowing. Finally, after a while of simply staring at each other, Gaara put his hands together, clasping his fingers with his pointer fingers extended upward and pressed together. The sand began to rise, then formed a dome around him. Sasuke sprinted forward and threw a punch at the dome. The moment his fist was within a foot of the dome, the side erupted with spikes. He stood there for a moment in surprise. His fist had made contact and he had avoided most of the spikes, but the side of the dome had been so hard it had made his hand bleed. After a moment he jumped back and the spikes sank back into the dome. Sasuke stared at it as blood dripped from his bloody knuckles. Suddenly sand began to swirl over the dome and formed an eyeball that Naruto assumed was so Gaara could see. Then Gaara began to chant again, but this one was different, mainly because Kurama began to get agitated when he heard him. Sasuke sprinted forward again and threw 3 kunai into the sphere, then leapt over it and began to run at it from the other side. The spikes shot out at him and he avoided them, then smashed his hand into the dome. The spikes retracted and he jumped back as they began to extend again. He tried to run at the dome again, but the spikes began shooting out faster and he had to cartwheel sideways to avoid them. He jumped into the air and smashed his foot into the top with no effect and jumped off just before the spikes shot out. Sasuke looked more carefully at the dome and saw a single spot where the sand had come together that was slightly weaker than the rest of the dome. Sasuke bent his knees slightly and raised his hand in front of his face, then unclasped part of a strap on his left arm. Then he jumped back and up the wall of the arena. He stopped about at the top and made several hand signs. Then he grasped his left wrist and held his hand so that the palm was about an inch away from the wall. As he focused his chakra, a ball of lightning began to form in his hand. When his Chidori was finished, he took off sprinting down the wall holding the inside of his elbow. As he neared the dome, the spikes shot out but Sasuke evaded them and slammed his Chidori into the dome. The Chidori blasted straight through the dome then into Gaara's left shoulder. Suddenly a splitting scream rang out of the dome. "Aahhhh." Gaara shrieked. "Blood. It's my blood." Sasuke tried to pull his hand out but it wouldn't budge. He quickly formed another Chidori and Gaara screamed again. Then Sasuke ripped his hand free and a grotesque, sand-colored, spiked hand was dragged out with it until it couldn't stretch anymore and let go. Sasuke fell to his knee clutching his arm and the hand began to retract into the hole in the dome. Naruto stared in shock and a small degree of panic crept over him as Kurama recognized the arm. Sasuke stared at the hole waiting for something to happen. A deep growl emanated from inside the dome and Sasuke could see something inside writhing around. Then an eye moved into view. The eye was completely black where it should be white and the pupil was in the shape of a 4-point star with a yellow iris around it. The moment the eye focused on Sasuke, a horrible roar rang out from the creature. Then cracks began to spread from the hole until they covered half of it. Then it fell away into dust. As it did, it revealed Gaara as he was but with a wound in his shoulder. There was no sign of whatever Sasuke had seen. He was breathing heavily and looked a bit scared. He clutched his wound and blood seeped out over his hand. Just then, white feathers began to fall and everyone began to fall asleep. Naruto felt his eyes get heavy but Naruto realized what was happening and released himself from the genjutsu. Several other shinobi did the same and a moment later, the balcony where the Minato and the cage had been sitting exploded. Then, several other explosions rang out around the village while Gaara and his teammates fled and the cage and Minato both jumped to the roof of their building and 4 sound ninja erected a building around them. Naruto released Hinata from the genjutsu just as Sakura took off after Sasuke. Naruto left chasing after her, and praying that his father could hold Orochimaru off until he returned. When he caught up with Sasuke and Sakura, Sasuke was barely conscious with the seal spread across half his body and Sakura was pinned to a tree by Gaara's mutated left hand. The arm was the same as what had followed Sasuke out of the sphere and was fused to the gourd on Gaara's back. The gourd also had a tail extended from the bottom and his right eye was black with a yellow iris and a star-shaped pupil with 4 dots around it. "Let her go," Naruto ordered. Gaara pulled and his hand broke off then reformed as the chunk pinning Sakura began to slowly harden, crushing her. "It will continue to harden until you defeat me," Gaara stated. "I recognize you. You're that boy again. The one with the brother inside." "Brother?" Naruto questioned before grinning. "Alright, let's see which brother chose better." Gaara growled and Naruto crouched, placing his hand down and allowing seals to shoot out from under his hand. Just as they reached Gaara, Naruto leapt into the air over Gaara's hand and landed to his left, spreading more seals before leaping directly over Gaara when the seals reached him and Gaara's hand crashed into the tree where he had been. Naruto landed placing more seals and watched as the hand whipped around Gaara, shooting toward him. After a moment, Naruto leapt to a branch directly opposite his starting point and placed more seals, this time reaching the other 3 sets. Just then, Gaara's hand flashed toward him. He teleported to a seal across from him at the last second and Gaara growled in frustration. "You're fast," Gaara commented. "It's annoying." Try this. Naruto grinned, creating 6 clones. Gaara smashed the branch where they were and they all teleported to a different seal. Naruto was directly behind Gaara and watched as 4 of his clones attacked, 2 with air bullets and 2 with wind swords. At the last second, Gaara jumped, the attacks all passing under him and killing the clone opposite the one that sent the attack, and the last 2 clones fell toward Gaara from above with Rasengans. He held his arm over his head, blocking the attack, but the explosions reduced his arm to dust. After a moment, it reformed and he leapt at Naruto. As he neared Naruto, a wall of Naruto clones crashed into Gaara in midair from below and sent him flying into the air. Then they all sent hundreds of air bullets at him. Gaara blocked the attack with his arm and tail and both fell away as dust. Then, Naruto appeared over him and slammed a Rasengan into his back, sending him crashing down into the ground, forming a massive crater and leveling the section of forest Naruto had marked. Naruto landed safely on his clones and spread seals over their new battlefield. Sakura and Sasuke were just outside the blast zone, luckily, so they now had a clear view of the battle. Naruto surrounded the crater with hundreds of clones just as the dust settled and revealed Gaara, now covered completely in sand with the exception of his feet and the scar forming the kanji for love on his forehead. Naruto's clones leapt into the air starting from the back row, forming a massive dome over Gaara. Every clone threw a wind sword and Gaara merely stood there as the jutsus tore through his body. When the dust settled, his body was falling away but he was unscathed. My turn, Gaara sneered as his body reformed. Then, the sand at his feet exploded into a massive column of sand and destroyed all of the clones. The smoke from their destruction filled the area, stretching high into the air. Then, when it cleared, there was a massive creature, similar in appearance to a tanuki but made out of sand standing in the center. Naruto stared in shock at the creature, knowing even without Kurama's affirmation that it was Shukaku. After a moment, Naruto's vision was suddenly blocked by sand and he instantly reached up and bit his thumb to make it bleed, then formed several hand seals before the sand covered him. Then, the sand exploded off followed by smoke. When it cleared, Naruto was standing on top of Gamabunta's head. Kid, please tell me you didn't summon me to fight Shukaku, Gamabunta sighed. Sorry, Naruto apologized. I figured I'd be useless. No doubt, Gamabunta nodded. Me fighting him is a suicidal pursuit. He drew his tanto and leapt forward, driving it into Shukaku's shoulder before Shukaku threw him over his shoulder, removing his right arm in the process. Gamabunta landed on his feet, his tanto landing a distance away and Shukaku's arm landing behind him and falling away as sand. Shukaku turned toward them, growling as Gaara rose from his forehead, lower body buried in sand. Shukaku's not in control yet, Gamabunta realized. If Gaara falls asleep, it will be. He's acting as a medium. Naruto nodded as Shukaku's arm reformed second before Gaara fell forward. Shukaku's eyes went from a dull tan to glowing bright yellow as Shukaku took control. Finally, Shukaku sneered, his voice higher pitched than Naruto expected. Now, then, wind style, drilling air bullet. He inhaled, his stomach expanding, then slammed his left arm into it, firing a massive ball of wind laced with chakra and sand. It was similar to the jutsu Naruto used except much, much larger in scale and power. Gamabunta leapt over it and made a hand seal. Water style, liquid bullets. Gamabunta said before spitting out 2 blasts of water. Shukaku fired 3 drilling air bullets and the third exploded against Gamabunta. Gamabunta landed on his feet and groaned. I can teleport us both to a seal if you can get him onto it, Naruto stated. No, Gamabunta sighed. You have to wake that kid up or this fight is over. Shukaku's not even at full power yet and he's already stronger than me. I have an idea, Naruto finally said. If you can get one of my clones to him, the clone will mark him and I will teleport to it and wake him up. Gamabunta nodded and Naruto created dozens of clones. This time, when Shukaku fired his jutsu, he launched Naruto clones too. When Shukaku countered, Gamabunta leapt over the jutsus and landed behind Shukaku, wrapping his arms around him. Naruto took a step forward as the last of his clones was eliminated, inches from marking Shukaku. Just as Naruto was about to jump, Shukaku raised his arms with enough force to launch Gamabunta and Naruto backward. Damn, Naruto growled. I can't keep a grip on him, Gamabunta growled. We'll have to do a collaboration transformation. Something with teeth and claws. I know just the thing, Naruto grinned, making the ram hand seal. Let's go. Transform. Gamabunta leapt forward and was covered in smoke. Then, Kurama flew out of the cloud of smoke, roaring in rage. Shukaku launched several blasts at Kurama, but he sped sideways, then leapt at him. Shukaku blasted him and he flipped over backward before dashing forward again. This time he leapt over the blast and latched onto Shukaku, his fangs and claws digging into his body. Then, he turned back into Gamabunta and Naruto. Naruto instantly leapt off of Gamabunta and smashed his fist into Gaara's face. That's just great, Shukaku complained. Give me a break, I just got here. Then, Gaara's eyes opened and Shukaku's returned to their dull tan color. Shukaku threw Gamabunta off and he disappeared, having run out of time. Naruto sprinted toward Gaara, seriously wishing he had thought to tag him when he punched him. Just as he tried to punch him, sand shot up and wrapped around Naruto. Naruto growled in frustration but didn't have the energy to break free. Chakra! Naruto shouted. Kurama gave him a bit and Naruto threw his head forward, smashing his forehead into Gaara's. Both simply stayed there for a moment before cracks spread around Gaara. Then, Shukaku's whole body fell into dust. Naruto and Gaara both landed on the top of a tree beside the area Gaara had cleared and then sat up looking at each other. You don't understand me, you never will, Gaara growled. You were rejected by everyone, Naruto stated knowingly. You never had a single friend and your own family hated you. You were afraid to sleep for fear of Shukaku breaking free. You hated your family for putting a monster inside of you. How am I doing? How? Gaara began. I have the 9 tails sealed inside of me, remember? Naruto questioned, looking sideways to see the sand falling off of Sakura, who Sasuke caught. When I was young, the only people that cared for me were my mother and father. I had no friends. Part of me hated my parents for sealing a monster inside me, and I hated myself for being a monster. The difference is, I moved on. If all truth, you had it a lot worse, and I get that. But I am the closest thing to understanding you'll find. I lived something like you did. But I moved on. I didn't let my hate fester. Eventually I met people that accepted me. I found people that I care about, people I love. And no matter what you do, I will always defend them. Even if it means my life. You would give you life for them? Gaara questioned. You will never understand. Only by fighting for yourself and only for yourself will you find true strength. Just then, Gamabunta's tanto, which was still sticking in the ground, exploded into a cloud of smoke and Naruto and Gaara leapt at each other. When they reached each other, Naruto smashed his fist into the side of Gaara's face and sent him flying. They both fell through the trees, crashing down and simply laying there. After about a minute, Naruto managed to roll over and began dragging himself forward with one arm as his other was numb. How can you still keep going? Gaara panted. Because I'm not fighting for myself, Naruto panted. Just then, Temari and Kankuro appeared in front of him to protect him from Naruto. Stay back, Temari commanded, but Naruto ignored him. No, Gaara spoke up. That's it. I've had enough. We're leaving. Temari and Kankuro both stared at him in shock before nodding and they picked him up and all left. Naruto finally passed out. Meanwhile at the Chunin exams arena, Orochimaru and his sound ninja were retreating. The Anbu all rushed into the trees created by the reincarnated first Hokage during the fight and began searching for Minato. They found him.